The unsettling encounter at the year-end gala. Don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more captivating stories. The annual year-end gala was looming, and while my husband, Julian, was practically vibrating with anticipation, I confess my enthusiasm was considerably more subdued. After a relentless 12 months in the demanding field of international finance, Julian envisioned the evening as a much-needed opportunity to reconnect with his colleagues in a relaxed, non-work environment. He spoke of it incessantly, painting a picture of camaraderie and light-hearted banter far removed from spreadsheets and boardrooms. For me, however, office parties often felt like elaborate performances. Acquaintances who barely offered a nod during the week transformed into boisterous social butterflies, their forced joviality grating on my nerves. Yet, Julian's genuine excitement was infectious, and I decided to attend, if only to offer him my unwavering support. The venue was predictably upscale, a trendy establishment with strategically dimmed lighting, the smooth melodies of a jazz quartet drifting through the air, and tables laden with hors d'oeuvres that seemed to prioritize artistic presentation over actual substance. I recognized a handful of faces, mostly spouses of Julian's closer associates, but the majority of the attendees were his direct colleagues, many of whom I had only encountered in fleeting hallway introductions. I positioned myself discreetly by Julian's side, engaging in polite, albeit somewhat stilted, conversations, consciously trying to remain a peripheral figure. It was then that my gaze fell upon her. Her name was Isolde, a name Julian had mentioned casually a few times in passing. She was a striking woman in her late 30s, tall and elegant with a cascade of raven hair that framed a face possessing a captivating allure. There was an undeniable magnetism about her, a presence that effortlessly drew attention. And if I'm being completely honest, I couldn't help but notice how frequently she seemed to gravitate towards Julian. Her laughter at his jokes seemed a touch too resonant, her hand lingered on his forearm a fraction too long during their exchanges. An inexplicable unease began to simmer within me. Later in the evening, the initial buzz of the party had mellowed slightly. I found myself seeking refuge in a quieter corner of the expansive room, a half-empty glass of Sauvignon Blanc clutched in my hand, indulging in a bit of observational people-watching. The relative solitude was a welcome respite, allowing me a momentary escape from the forced conviviality. Just as a sense of calm began to settle over me, I sensed a presence beside me. I turned to find Isolde standing there, a champagne flute in her hand, a practiced smile gracing her lips. "Serafina, isn't it?" she said, her voice smooth and melodic, carrying just a hint of an unfamiliar accent. "I hope you're enjoying the festivities." Her smile felt almost too polished, too rehearsed, like an actress delivering a well-worn line. I offered a polite smile in return. "Yes, thank you," I replied, striving for a casual tone. "It's a lovely venue, and the food is quite exquisite." She chuckled softly, her gaze flicking across the room towards Julian, who was engrossed in an animated discussion with a group of his male colleagues. "Julian is quite the charmer, isn't he?" Isolde remarked, her tone almost conspiratorial. "He has such an easy way about him. It's no wonder everyone in the office adores him." I nodded, consciously suppressing a growing sense of discomfort. "Yes, he's a wonderful man. We've been together for many years." Isolde's eyes lingered on Julian for a fleeting moment before she turned back to me. "You two make a handsome couple. He's a lucky man to have you." Her voice dropped slightly, as if she were about to impart a confidential secret. "You possess such a refined grace, Serafina. And Julian, well, he's undoubtedly a good man. But sometimes," she paused, her eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief, "don't you think we all crave a little excitement?" There it was. The subtle undercurrent in her words, the veiled suggestion that something more lay beneath the surface. My heart gave a sudden, erratic thump. What exactly was she implying? Before I could formulate a response, Isolde's phone chimed, and she offered a swift apology, explaining that she needed to take the call. As she glided away, a knot of apprehension tightened in my stomach. The air around me suddenly felt thick and heavy, and my mind began to race, conjuring a multitude of unsettling possibilities. But I quickly dismissed them. It was probably nothing. She was likely just making polite conversation, albeit a slightly awkward one. Despite my attempts to refocus on the remainder of the evening, The image of Isolde and Julian kept intruding into my thoughts. The way she had spoken to him, the lingering quality of her gaze, it was as if she perceived something in him that I didn't. I shook off the disquieting feeling and sought out Julian. He was still engaged in conversation, but when he caught sight of me, his face illuminated with that familiar, reassuring smile. It was a smile that usually had the power to dispel any anxieties, to make me feel secure and grounded. But tonight, a subtle dissonance lingered beneath the surface. I was undeniably relieved when the party finally began to draw to a close, the stream of goodbyes and farewells signaling the imminent end of the evening. As Julian and I drove home, a comfortable silence settled between us, both of us weary but seemingly content. As we pulled out of the venue's parking lot, I stole a glance at Julian, trying to decipher his mood. "So," I began, keeping my tone light, "how was the rest of the party?" "It was good," he replied, his hands resting casually on the steering wheel, his voice relaxed. "Isolde was actually quite engaging to talk to. She has a remarkable energy, don't you think?" I managed to smile, though it felt more like a reflex than a genuine expression of happiness. "Yes, she's something." Julian chuckled, oblivious to the subtle tension in my voice. "I think she quite liked you, Serafina. She said you were very poised." A knot tightened in my stomach. "Did she?" "Yes, she's really quite nice," Julian continued, seemingly oblivious to my growing discomfort. "It's rare to find someone so effortlessly convivial in a professional setting. She has this natural ability to make everyone feel at ease." His words hung in the air, and a disquieting realization dawned on me. Perhaps I wasn't the only one who had noticed Isolde's particular attentiveness. The night had left me with an unsettling feeling, a sense of standing precariously on the edge of something I didn't fully comprehend. What was the true nature of the dynamic between Julian and Isolde? Was there more to their interactions than I was privy to? The days following the gala unfolded in a predictable rhythm. Julian returned to the demanding world of finance, and I continued to manage our home and my own freelance translation work. Yet, a subtle shift had occurred within me. I found myself unable to completely banish the image of Isolde from my thoughts. Every time Julian laughed or engaged in a phone conversation, a nagging doubt would surface, a fleeting suspicion that she might somehow be involved. I tried to rationalize my anxieties, telling myself that I was being overly sensitive, perhaps even paranoid. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it stubbornly refused to wither. It was nearly a week later that the simmering unease finally reached a boiling point. I was on the phone with my sister, Elara, catching up on our usual weekly exchange of news and gossip, when Julian's phone, resting on the kitchen counter, vibrated insistently. I had been pacing through the kitchen as I spoke, and the bright glow of the screen caught my attention, revealing a message preview from an unfamiliar number. My curiosity, unfortunately, got the better of me. I walked over and glanced at the screen. The message was from Isolde. "Julian," it read, "I know this might seem a little forward, but I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation at the gala the other night. Perhaps we could catch up again soon? Just the two of us." I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The words, on the surface, were innocuous enough. Yet, a distinct undercurrent, an undeniable intimacy, sent a jolt of alarm through me. What was going on? Why was she reaching out to Julian in this manner? Why wasn't it a casual group invitation or a more work-related message? My mind began to whirl, a vortex of questions and anxieties. Was she actively trying to cultivate a closer relationship with him? And what about her behavior at the party? Had I been merely imagining things, or had she indeed been subtly flirting with him all along? I stood there for several moments, struggling to regain my composure. I knew I needed to confront Julian, but I was unsure how to broach the subject without sounding accusatory or insecure. I desperately wanted to avoid igniting an unnecessary conflict, yet I couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. Taking a deep breath, I picked up his phone and reread Isolde's message, the seemingly innocent words now imbued with a sinister undertone in my mind. Then, acting on impulse, I typed a quick reply from his phone, hoping to buy myself some precious time. "Hi Isolde," I wrote, trying to mimic Julian's usual tone. "Thanks for the message. Julian is quite swamped with work at the moment, but I'll be sure to let him know you reached out. Hope you're doing well. I hit send and placed the phone back down just as Julian walked into the kitchen. He glanced at me, his expression soft and unsuspecting. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle and laced with a hint of curiosity. I forced a smile, trying to project an air of normalcy. "Yeah, just checking something on your phone. Everything's fine." He nodded, but a slight furrow appeared on his brow. "You sure? You don't look entirely convinced." I hesitated. This was it. The moment of truth. I had to decide whether to voice my concerns or bury my anxieties and pretend everything was perfectly normal. I saw Isolde's message," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She said she wanted to catch up with you." Julian looked momentarily perplexed. "What do you mean? She sent me a message?" "Yes," I replied, striving to keep my voice steady, though a tremor betrayed my inner turmoil. "It was just a casual invitation, but it seemed like it might be more than that." A long silence stretched between us, the unspoken tension palpable. I could almost see the cogs turning in Julian's mind as he processed my words. Finally, he sighed and walked over to me, gently taking my hands in his. "Serafina," he said, his voice soft but earnest, "I had absolutely no idea you were feeling this way. Isolde and I are just colleagues, I promise you. She can be a little forward sometimes, but there is absolutely nothing going on between us. I honestly didn't realize it was making you uncomfortable." I stared at him for a long moment, searching his eyes for any hint of deception. Was he being genuinely truthful, or was this merely a well-rehearsed deflection? "Then why didn't you mention the message?" I asked, unable to completely suppress the accusatory edge in my voice. "I honestly didn't think it was a big deal," Julian admitted, his gaze unwavering. "She's always been a little more outgoing than most people in the office. I certainly didn't want you to think I was hiding anything, but seeing your reaction now, I realize I should have been more upfront about it." I desperately wanted to believe him. I truly did. But a persistent part of me remained unsettled, a nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. I don't want to feel like I'm being ignored or left out," I confessed, the vulnerability creeping into my voice. "It feels like she's trying to get closer to you, Julian, and I don't know if I trust her intentions. I know you're a good man, but..." My voice trailed off, unsure of what I was even trying to articulate. It wasn't that I suspected Julian of infidelity, but the thought of Isolde insinuating herself into our lives felt uncomfortably familiar, deeply unnerving. Julian squeezed my hands, his gaze softening with understanding. "Serafina, I love you. I only want to be with you. Isolde is just a colleague, and I honestly didn't perceive her message as anything significant. But if it's making you uncomfortable, I will absolutely handle it. I'll make it unequivocally clear to her that our relationship is strictly professional and that there is nothing beyond friendship for me." I studied him intently, searching for any flicker of insincerity. But all I saw reflected in his eyes was the man I had married, the man whose loyalty I had always believed in. The knot of doubt in my heart began to loosen ever so slightly. "Okay," I said quietly, still not entirely convinced, but willing to extend my trust. I don't want to feel like I'm losing you." Julian offered a reassuring smile and pulled me into a warm embrace. "You're not losing me, Serafina. You will never lose me." But deep down, a small, persistent voice whispered a question: was there more to Isolde's intentions than either Julian or I currently realized? The message was one thing, but how would the situation unfold from here? The next few days passed with an unusual sense of calm. Julian made a conscious effort to keep me informed, letting me know whenever Isolde or anyone else from the office contacted him. It was a gesture that I appreciated, and it did help to ease my anxieties somewhat. However, the underlying unease never quite dissipated. My mind would frequently replay scenes from the gala, the intensity of Isolde's gaze, the lingering touch on Julian's arm, the way she seemed to hover just a little too close. I couldn't shake the persistent feeling that there was something I was missing, some crucial piece of the puzzle that remained hidden. It was the following Friday when the fragile sense of calm was shattered. Julian and I had planned a quiet evening at home, a much-needed opportunity to reconnect after a busy week. But as I was preparing dinner, his phone buzzed again. I glanced over, my heart skipping a beat as Isolde's name flashed across the screen. This time, it wasn't just a casual text message. It was a photograph. Julian had left his phone on the kitchen counter, and despite my best intentions, my curiosity, fueled by lingering suspicion, overwhelmed me. I walked over and picked it up, unable to resist the pull of the unknown. The photograph was of Isolde, taken at a cafe. She was smiling broadly, radiating an air of carefree happiness. But it wasn't the image itself that caught my attention, it was the accompanying message. Just had a coffee and it reminded me of that night at the gala, it read. Would love to do it again sometime. Maybe without the crowds next time? A cold chill ran down my spine. My first instinct was to drop the phone as if it were a venomous snake, but I couldn't. Something about that message, the blatant suggestion of a private rendezvous, made my stomach churn. I hadn't been imagining things. She was clearly trying to pursue something more with Julian. I took a shaky breath and placed the phone back down just as Julian walked in from the living room. I was still standing by the counter, my hands trembling slightly as I tried to compose myself. He looked at me, and in that instant, I knew that something had shifted, that the fragile truce we had established had been irrevocably broken. Is everything okay? He asked, a note of concern in his voice as he registered the tension radiating from me. I nodded, but the gesture lacked conviction. I felt my chest tighten, the air suddenly becoming difficult to draw into my lungs. I saw Isolde's message, I said, my voice as steady as I could manage. Julian's expression flickered, a mixture of surprise and perhaps a hint of guilt crossing his features. Then, he sighed. Serafina, Julian, I interrupted, my voice trembling slightly, this is more than just friendly messages, isn't it? I saw her message, and it wasn't just casual. She's trying to get closer to you. Julian stepped closer, a deep frown forming on his brow. Serafina, I swear to you, she's just a colleague. There is absolutely nothing happening. You are reading far too much into this. But his words sounded hollow, unconvincing even to my own ears. I could see the frustration in his eyes, but I wasn't sure anymore if it was frustration directed at me or at the situation itself. Julian, I said, my voice quieter but firm, it's not just the message anymore. It's the way she acts around you, the way she reaches out. I'm not blind, you know. It feels like she's pushing boundaries, and I don't think I can just ignore it anymore. A long, deafening silence filled the room. Finally, Julian let out a long breath and rubbed his forehead wearily. I know I haven't been the best at keeping things transparent with you. I honestly didn't think anything of it because she's always been a little forward. But I see now how much it's bothering you, and I need to fix that. I promise you, I will talk to her. I will make it absolutely clear that her behavior is inappropriate. A part of me desperately wanted to believe him, to accept his explanation and move forward. But another part of me, the part that had witnessed Isolde's subtle advances firsthand, remained deeply skeptical. I just need you to be honest with me, Julian, I said, feeling the weight of my own emotions pressing down on me. I don't want to feel like I'm being played for a fool. I'm not trying to play you, Serafina, he said, his voice softer now, the earlier frustration replaced by a tone of genuine concern. I don't want to lose you over this. I will talk to Isolde, and I will make sure she understands her place. You are the only one I care about. I looked into his eyes, searching for something, reassurance, sincerity, anything that would quell the storm of doubt raging within me. And for a fleeting moment, I found it. I could see the man I had married, the man who had promised me his unwavering loyalty. But even as I found that flicker of hope, a persistent unease lingered. Could I truly trust him implicitly, or was there a deeper, more complicated truth lurking beneath the surface? We spent the rest of the evening in a strained silence, the unspoken tension hanging heavy in the air. I knew Julian was trying to bridge the gap between us, but my mind kept returning to Isolde's suggestive message. What did it truly signify? And how far was she willing to go in her pursuit of Julian? The next morning, after a perfunctory breakfast, Julian left for work, adhering to his usual routine. But as the front door clicked shut behind him, a strange premonition washed over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had missed something, that there was a crucial layer to this situation that remained unseen. I decided then and there that I couldn't simply sit back and wait for answers. I needed to take control, to understand the true nature of Isolde's intentions. I needed to hear it directly from her. The following days were fraught with a quiet tension, but I knew I had to act decisively. I couldn't allow doubt to fester and erode the foundation of my marriage. I needed to confront Isolde, to clear the air, to understand the dynamic between her and Julian. I wasn't entirely sure how I would approach the situation, but a deep-seated instinct told me it was the only way forward. By the time Monday morning arrived, my resolve had solidified. I had to speak with Isolde. There was no other path to quell the disquiet that had taken root in my heart. I composed a message, simple and direct. "Hi Isolde, I was hoping we could talk. I've been feeling a bit uncomfortable with the way things have been between us lately. Would you be open to meeting up?" Her reply arrived almost instantly, a surprising eagerness radiating from her digital response. She suggested a small cafe near her office, nothing ostentatious, just a quiet corner where we could have an honest conversation. A wave of nervousness washed over me as I dressed and prepared to leave. This wouldn't be easy, but I knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within, that it was necessary for the sake of my marriage. When I arrived at the cafe, Isolde was already there, seated at a table by the window. She appeared relaxed, casually sipping a latte and scrolling through her phone. Her expression was serene, almost detached, but as soon as she noticed me, she put her phone down and offered a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Serafina, hello. I wasn't entirely sure if you would actually come," she said, her tone light, almost teasing. I sat down across from her, trying to project an air of calm despite the turmoil churning within me. "Frankly, Isolde, I wasn't sure myself," I replied, meeting her gaze directly, "but I felt it was important for us to talk about everything." Isolde's smile faltered slightly, and she leaned back in her chair, her arms crossing defensively. "I'm not entirely sure what you mean. Is this about Julian?" "Yes," I stated firmly, my voice steady despite the undercurrent of anxiety. "It's about Julian. I don't know precisely what has been transpiring between the two of you, but the nature of your recent communication with him has made me deeply uncomfortable." She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow but remained silent, allowing me to continue. I took a deep breath, a sense of urgency propelling my words. "Isolde, we've never had much of a personal connection, but I can't ignore the messages, the way you've been actively seeking his personal attention. It feels inappropriate." Isolde's expression softened almost imperceptibly, though a flicker of something unreadable danced behind her eyes. "I see," she said quietly, her tone losing its earlier playful edge. "I genuinely didn't intend to make you feel uneasy, Serafina. That was never my objective." For a fleeting moment, I was taken aback. I had braced myself for defensiveness, for denials, for a dismissal of my concerns. Instead, she seemed almost apologetic. "Then why did you send him that message after the gala?" I pressed, my heart pounding in my chest. "You specifically suggested meeting up, just the two of you. It didn't strike me as a casual, work-related invitation." Isolde looked down at her latte for a moment, her gaze fixed on the swirling foam. When she finally met my eyes again, there was a newfound sincerity in their depths. "Serafina," she began, her voice softer now, almost confessional, "I won't lie to you. I did enjoy our conversation with Julian at the party. He's kind. He listens. And perhaps, in the fleeting atmosphere of the evening, I allowed myself a momentary lapse in judgment. However," she stressed, her gaze earnest, "I have never had any intention of jeopardizing your marriage. I respect the commitment you and Julian share, and I can see the depth of your affection for one another. I should have been more mindful of professional boundaries, and for that, I sincerely apologize." I leaned back in my chair, the weight of her words settling upon me. Part of me still felt a lingering suspicion, a reluctance to fully accept her explanation. But another part, the more rational part, acknowledged the unexpected honesty in her confession. She wasn't the scheming antagonist I had perhaps subconsciously painted her to be. She had simply, perhaps carelessly, allowed herself to blur the lines of professional conduct. "I never meant to cause any distress," she continued, her voice laced with what seemed like genuine regret. "I certainly didn't want to be the catalyst for any doubt or insecurity in your relationship with Julian. If my actions have crossed any boundaries, I truly apologize. It's just. Sometimes, in the professional world, it's easy to momentarily forget that individuals in committed, happy relationships are, unequivocally, off limits. I am truly sorry for not respecting that. A moment of contemplative silence hung between us as I processed her unexpected candor. Isolde wasn't the villain in this narrative, she was, perhaps, simply a woman who had momentarily misjudged a situation. Thank you, Isolde, I said at last, my voice quieter than before. Thank you for being honest with me. I appreciate it more than you know. And I apologize for perhaps jumping to conclusions. Isolde offered a small, genuine smile this time. I understand, Serafina. It's natural to feel protective of what is precious to you, and Julian is clearly a good man. He's fortunate to have someone like you in his life. I nodded, feeling a significant weight lift from my chest. A residual unease still lingered, but it was no longer solely directed at Isolde. It had shifted, now focusing on the delicate balance of trust within my own marriage and the importance of clear communication. As I left the cafe, a strange sense of clarity settled over me. I couldn't predict what the future held, but I knew one fundamental truth: I needed to trust Julian. Without that foundational trust, our relationship would inevitably crumble. My conversation with Isolde had provided some much-needed perspective, but now, the onus was on Julian and me to rebuild and reinforce the bonds of our commitment. When I returned home later that evening, Julian was already there, sitting on the sofa, a palpable air of apprehension surrounding him. He looked up as I entered, his expression a mixture of caution and hopeful anticipation. "How did it go?" he asked quietly, his gaze searching mine. I sat down beside him, taking a deep breath before speaking. "We talked, Julian. And she was honest with me. She admitted that there was nothing beyond a fleeting connection at the party. But, I emphasized, turning to look directly at him, I need to trust you more, Julian. And in return, I need you to be more open and transparent with me." Julian nodded, a visible wave of relief washing over his face. "I can do that, Serafina. I will be better. I promise you. I don't want to lose you over something so misguided." I offered a small, genuine smile, a warmth spreading through my chest. "And I don't want to lose you either, Julian." We sat there in comfortable silence for a long moment, the weight of the recent turmoil still present, but now accompanied by a shared sense of hope and a renewed commitment to our relationship. It wouldn't be an instantaneous healing process. Rebuilding trust takes time and consistent effort. But as we sat side by side on the sofa that evening, a quiet understanding passed between us. We were both willing to move forward, to learn from this unsettling episode, and to actively nurture the enduring love that bound us together. The path ahead might not be entirely smooth, but for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of optimism, a belief that our marriage, though tested, could emerge stronger and more resilient than before. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button and share this story with anyone who might relate or find it thought-provoking. Subscribe for more real-life dramas, relationship insights, and captivating narratives that will keep you hooked.